But I think my concern was, in my growing up, I wasn't as vocal during a sermon. So if I started doing it now, was that cultural appropriation in a way that's not helpful? Am I trying to be someone I'm not? And
Right.
And would others see that and think, who's she to say amen during a sermon?
Good morning and welcome to Sold Out Saturday Stories. I'm your host, Rosalind Malone. I believe everyone has a story, and everyone's story deserves to be heard. So if you or someone you know need to borrow a little faith, hope, or encouragement, come close and lean in as my guests share their story on why they know that they know that they know that old news is still good news.
Hello, ladies.
Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I am doing wonderful. I am so excited to hear your sides of the story. So thank you guys so much for saying yes to sharing your side, because there's a his side and a her side, and I've heard his side, meaning their side, your husband's. Now I want to hear her side, like the lady's side. So thank you so much for saying yes to sharing your story, your side of the story with me. But before we get started, I'd like you each to please introduce yourselves to Sold Out Saturday Stories community, please.
My name is Kim Emerson, and I am married to Pastor Bernard Emerson at Tapestry Church.
Hey, so my name is Stephane Brooks. I'm married to Kyle Brooks. I'm a sister with Kim Emerson, and I'm also part of the Tapestry Church community. I live in Oakland, California as well.
Yes. So I actually kind of post a couple of my girlfriends, how would you feel if your husband told you, hey, we're going to close our church door? And one of the ladies that I post actually said, okay, so the men are brothers, but do the ladies consider themselves sisters? And I'm like,
absolutely.
That's an interesting question. I mean, because I think that it's easier for men to kind of mesh together and go with the flow. And not that it's hard for women all the time, but sometimes it's a little bit different, because you're following the headship of your husbands, essentially, right? So can you guys tell me how you met? And I don't care who speak to this, but, your story may be different from Stephanie's story. So how did you guys meet? Because I understand that your husbands met at this conference kind of event. How did the two of you meet? Were you there?
I recall first meeting Stephanie at her house. When they were church planting, for a period, they were meeting in their home, and they were doing we were doing dinners, right? Is that what it was? I believe we were doing dinners. And basically everybody would bring something, and they had this big long table, and we would eat family style, put everything out, and there were some other people there. And so that was the first time I got to meet her, and it was fabulous because they were so warm and welcoming, and it was just great.
So, that's funny you say that, Kim, because as Rosalind was asking him, oh, guy, it's hard for me to remember, actually.
I know, and usually I'm a forgetful one, right?
I kind of had that recollection as well. But I mean, I think for me, anyone who knows Kim, Kim is very easy to love. She is so lovable and so friendly and warm, takes guards down immediately. She comes in for the hug right away.
Yeah.
And
I just throw myself on people.
I think it was just right away when we met, we just got along, and it felt very easy. And she's just so gracious. Yeah. I think I was out of my mind that day, busy with something. And I don't even think I microwaved something for dinner. I don't even think I cooked. I was kind of a wreck, kind of all over the place that day. But you guys just made it feel so easy. And you felt it just felt easy to be with you from the get-go.
Okay.
We didn't want it to, it didn't have to be a big deal,
Yeah.
And the fact that you were able to just welcome people into your home. So
Okay.
people don't do that as much anymore.
No, we don't. I mean, and that's why this is important, and our stories are important, right? People need to know how we made it over, how we made it through, what happened, and not all the shiny stuff, There's some dips in our stories. So I think it's important for people to hear our story, but to have a little hope and knowing that they can still move along in life, holding on to God's hand. I mean, let's learn, right? So you guys said that the initial meeting for you two was at a dinner. Did you guys know what the intentions were during that time? Because I think you guys' churches courted one another, but did you guys know what the men were doing? Because this was in 2016, right?
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
That makes sense, because we started Tapestry in 2018, and it was a process before then.
So did you guys know what the intention of the meeting was? Or were you guys thinking we're just getting together? I have some new friends that are coming to dinner. Would you microwave something, please, Stephanie?
Well, and I think you guys had already started that process, right, of having the communal dinners.
Okay.
That wasn't the first time. So that was something they did on a regular basis. And so during the process, because we were courting each other,
but
we started to. Well, I don't remember knowing.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
But that's just me though, because again, so let me just make it perfectly clear that I am a very odd wife. This is where Steph and I differ a lot, and we've had these conversations. A lot of times I don't know what's happening. But it doesn't bother me that I don't know what's happening. Whereas Steph is definitely, she wants to be on point, and she's very organized. She wants to make that time. And that's what I love about the two of us, because where I'm a little lax, she brings some law and order too. So, and that's not a bad thing, Steph. Please don't think that I mean that, because
law and order right now does not ring very nicely in my ears. So.
Yeah, I understand based on everything that's happened. Well, you bring organization. How about that? You bring organization and structure, whereas I'm a lot more laid back and sometimes too easygoing to a fault.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I don't think I knew.
So Stephanie, did you know what the intentions were?
Yes. And I say that because I actually think from the beginning of even our church plant, Kyle and I both had a real heart for doing interracial ministry and doing the work in a partnership. Honestly, we started by ourselves because we didn't have a partner, but we always wanted one. And so we had been praying for years that God would bring a partner. So it wasn't, to me, it didn't really feel like out of the blue. Like Kyle said, hey, by the way, we're doing this. And I wasn't on board. Like, it actually was the desire of our heart from the beginning. And like when Kyle said, hey, I met this guy in the clergy cohort, and it was more like
she knew-ish. Kim.
Well, no, it was like, don't misunderstand though.
We're getting to know each other. We're developing a relationship, and it was like one step at a time,
Yeah.
And just so you know that was Bernard and I intention from the beginning of church planting. But at that dinner, I wasn't under the awareness that that Bernard and Kyle were like really trying to bring it together.
I don't know if they were 100% there either.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that was the intention. I think it was just still part of the initial courtship.
Yeah.
That makes any sense.
So both of your guys' husbands are church planners?
Yeah.
Is that how they met at that event? I forget what they call it.
Clergy cohort?
Yeah.
No, so I don't know if that cohort was specifically designed for church planters. Ooh. I think it was just a cohort based around social justice.
Yeah.
So
I think any ministers, people involved in ministry, were invited to participate.
Yeah.
There were some church planters and some pastors from established churches.
I had never heard of that then. I had never heard of that. I didn't know that there was such a thing. I remember the lady Jane Elliott doing all these experiments, racial tension and biases and prejudices. I remember her being like on Oprah. I remember her being on Jada Smith's Red Table. And I remember her talking about that. But that seemed like it was years ago, So I didn't know that people were literally having these type of gatherings. So that is so huge to me, especially in light of what we're going through in our world right now. So I'm going to start with Stephanie. Stephanie, did you grow up in a Christian atmosphere, background? What was your upbringing like? And who was your influence back then?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share. I am a pastor's daughter, a pastor's granddaughter, and a pastor's niece, like 3 times over. So I was in Christian school from the time I was, started going to school through 12th grade, and then college after that and grad school after that. So yes, I definitely grew up in a Christian home, and have been very blessed by my family and the generational faithfulness of God, really, to me through a Christian family that wasn't just Christian in name, but really lived their faith and lived with open arms. Of course, no families are perfect, and mine wasn't either. But I've always been really involved in the church and really well loved by the church. That said, there was a period of life where I definitely did not want to marry a pastor and did not want to be a pastor's wife.
Yes.
That was a journey for me when I fell in love with Kyle, and then when God called him to ministry, having to kind of process through that. But the church has been the church has been family for me for my whole life, and I know that church hasn't always done things well or done things right, and has wounded many people, and I just feel like I'm so blessed to have received like the love and the nourishment of the church through my life growing up in a lot of ways.
Awesome. I have one question to ask you. So Kyle was not a pastor when you met him. He was, or he was not?
No.
Wow. So that's really interesting, because I'm like, why didn't you want to marry a pastor back then? I mean, growing up, I know, okay, stop, that's fine. Because I get that. When my husband first told me he was called, I think I wasn't the first one that he told. And I'm like, what do I have to change? This is just me. Who's going to be looking at me, their expectations of me, and all of that. It's not about me. Miss Kim.
Yes.
You grew up in the church. Can you remind me of your background and your influence as far as the church?
I definitely have been a church girl my whole life. My mother took me to Zion Tabernacle Baptist Church. She says when I was 3 months old, and that church just happened to be on the block we lived on. So we were able to walk to church. And Pastor Emerson was the pastor then. And Pastor Alonzo Emerson was my pastor growing up, who happens to be Bernard's dad. I married the pastor's son. Now, mind you, most everyone that knows Bernard knows that Pastor Emerson is not his biological father. He was adopted by Pastor Emerson and took his last name because he was a man of such great godly influence in his life. So Pastor Emerson grew up like my dad. So I've actually known his father based on the fact that I'm older than him also. But I was there when Bernard got there. So
older than who?
Bernard. I know all that gray he has in his beard. You can't tell, right?
I'm older than Kyle too, so.
Are you? That is so cute. I love it. So you guys need to tell them what to do. Tell them no. Tell them no.
They would beg to differ, I'm sure. But...
Okay. So you guys have your own individual churches, your own individual congregations, right? You're used to your style of worship and all of this. Was there any diversity in either of your churches at that time when they were separated?
In our church plants or the churches we grew up in?
In the church that you and Bernard had together, because you guys started right.
There was not, although that was the design.
Okay.
Because we tended to draw those that look like us.
Exactly. Yes.
And we even tried to, we would meet in schools, and we would meet in schools in more diverse areas to hopefully to draw others than other people that didn't look like us to come to church, but that didn't quite pan out. We would have an occasional visitor here or there, but no one that really, felt drawn to our church.
Okay. And Stephanie?
Yeah, and when you're asking about diversity, you're asking about racial diversity specifically?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
We had a small group, maybe about 25 or so at the time when we joined, and we did have some diversity, absolutely. More like some racial diversity, although it was still majority white, because like Kim said, you do tend to attract people who are similar to you. But I don't want to underrepresent the people in our community who were there, who were not white. And that was important. And I hope that they always felt like they had a place, just as much of a place. And it was a place of belonging for them. And then what was interesting also about our diverse churches is that many of them, like Kyle and I, were transplants to Oakland and not from there originally, whereas the Way Church, with Kim and Bernard, most of them were Oakland locals. And I think that was also really huge for us in terms of not just racial diversity, but like diversity of come from.
Yeah, that's huge. That's really interesting, because I was telling your husbands how I've always heard, like my husband or just people in general, say that Sundays are the most segregated day of the week, not really giving it much thought. And like you guys alluded to, Black folks tend to go with the Black churches. That's where they tend to worship. That's where they're comfortable. And white churches tend to stick with white churches, white people. That's where they're comfortable. So that's a very interesting point, you guys. That's very interesting. So, all right. So let's just get on down into it then. All right. So when your guys' husbands went to your individual churches and said, this is what we're getting ready to do. Close the door of our own churches and combined with another church, which is what were your thoughts, and what were, when your husbands first told you, what were you thinking? I mean, I know that it was always the plan, right? But it's getting ready to happen, meaning they're not joining our church and we're not joining their church. We're closing our doors. What were your guys' thoughts?
And I think, Stephane, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it kind of just came together that way, if it makes any sense. So the times when we were talking about coming together, I don't think they knew exactly how that would play out. It just kept, as they kept having the conversations and we kept meeting together and becoming family, then I believe finally in the end, we said, okay, maybe we can just become one. And then it was, at the tail end of things, having those conversations when we started thinking about, okay, well, what would probably be wise and fair is to not have you all come to us or have us come to you. It would make more sense to start fresh.
Yeah.
The fresh location, because that way, no one, if they came to us, I probably might have some feeling of dominance, like, don't try to come in here taking over.
Right.
And likewise, right?
Yeah.
So that gave us a fresh start, fresh perspective, starting everything from scratch. No one could say, oh, well, we've always done it this way. Well, we haven't done it anyway. We've never done it any kind of way. So we create the way we all want it to be. And that's what's been so wonderful, is that we've been able to talk through any changes or, what we want it to look like. And our pastors have been so mindful of that to make sure that we have a voice, meaning we, the lay members.
Right.
And I say we, the lay members, because again, unlike Steph, I find out about stuff most times with the congregation, and it works for me. So it's fine. So I feel like I'm right in there with them, and I don't feel like I'm anyone special. So I love that.
You're fabulous. You're special. Let me just tell you right now. Let me just take a pause. You're special, and you're so fabulous. Stephane, what was your thoughts? I mean, you've been planning for this for a while, right? But now it's actually happening. And you're getting ready to close your door of comfort where you're used to being and worshiping and all these things. What was your thinking?
Yeah, that's a great question. As Kim mentioned, it was a process. And I think the way Kyle and Bernard went about that process was really wise. It really was not flipping a switch. And I think that could be, maybe it's possible in some circumstances, but it would have been even harder than it already was. We were developing relationships with one another for a while before we really did it. And we had even done really intentional things like work through a book called Multiracial Conversations.
Wow.
And both churches doing them simultaneously, and then sometimes and then coming together and having the conversations. And so, I think we were already having some of the hard conversations about worship style and preferences, and even church experiences and how different those can be from different cultures.
Right.
We were already having some of those conversations before we started. And so I think that just gave us a really strong foundation to know that we could do hard things together without it blowing up a relationship, right? We have the trust.
Right.
I think for me personally, I was excited.
Yeah.
I think it was so clear to me that God was in this, and that God answered our prayers miraculously with Kim and Bernard and the way.
Absolutely.
And it was doing something here. I don't quite know how it's going to turn out, but I want to be part of it. I want to be along the side.
Agreed. I was excited with just wondering how God was going to do it and what he was going to do. I just waited in anticipation to just see how things developed.
Mm-hmm. So before I get to that, did you guys I asked the guy, so who's the first lady? And Bernard is just hilarious. He says, well, there is no first lady, because who would be the second and who would be the third? And I thought I'd fall out my chair after that, but it was so beautiful. And then I like what he said, that would put too much pressure on the two of you. And I kind of mentioned it in the beginning of our conversation, my husband told me probably third, fourth, or fifth that he was called into the ministry, right?
Well, I think from a church planting perspective, and Steph will probably agree with me on this, is just like the pastor, you're the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. You do everything. You do whatever needs to be done to just make sure things flow smoothly and effectively. And that means janitor. So, you ain't putting on no big hat, sweeping and mopping the floor, so it's just, you do whatever is necessary to make things flow well.
Stephanie?
Yeah, Kim's right. I mean, and Kyle has always been really respectful of me in this and saying, like, how much do you want to be involved and how much can you be involved? And, you know, Kim and I both work full time outside of the church and have our own careers. And so, like, I've talked with Kyle about that. And I've always said, like, I want to be a highly committed church member and I don't want to be a member of the staff. You know, so you know, count me in. I'm committed to this cause, but I'm also doing another job 40 or sometimes more hours a week. So, and he's always been very respectful of that. But I will say, yeah, when you're church planting, it's like there's not very many people and there's a lot to be done. So everyone's pulling a little bit more weight. So yes, I was setting up chairs every week, taking them down. Yes, I was bringing food oftentimes. I was singing a lot because we didn't have many other people who, and I was happy to do that because those were gifts that I have. But I think that some of the roles that I play have shifted a little bit as we become Tapestry.
Yeah.
And they've been shifted in a way so much so that I am happy on Sunday mornings.
Wow.
Happy on Sunday mornings, because let me tell you.
Interesting, right? Because I'm like, okay, so Lord,
that is some help.
You know I can't sing, so if we were to start a church, who's gonna sing? Because I know
He'll bring someone.
And now, Stephanie, now I know you sing. So you guys were the choir, you know, the choir director, you know, the janitor, you know, all of those hats you wore. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so now it comes time for you guys to close the doors of your individual churches and become one. I understand that there was a little fallout on both sides. You guys know that?
Even from members, right?
Members.
Right.
Did that make you feel any kind of way or have any doubts that what you were doing was wrong, was not the right timing, or anything like that? I'm going to ask Stephanie first.
Yeah, I don't know if Bernard and Kyle mentioned it when you interviewed them, but one thing that we did before we joined together officially, which I thought was really cool and so smart I think it was Bernard's idea, we had a funeral. We had two funerals. We put to rest Oakland Communion, which was our church plant, and we put to rest the way. And we literally, each person had a chance to speak words of things that they would miss about our respective places. And we brought the fire, and it was really awesome. And I think it was a really nice memorial of recognizing what was and what was good in those things, and also releasing it into moving on to something else. So I thought that was an unusual idea, but I thought
it was genius. It really was.
Oh my gosh. So that's why I needed to hear your sides of the story. They didn't talk about that. I just asked them about the fallout, you know, and I think there's two from one church and one from another. But that is amazing. No, I did not hear that part. See? We know the details. That's
yeah. And then in terms of the fallout piece, I mean, I think for me, whenever someone left the church, it was hard and sad.
Hard.
You know, you build into people and you love them, and I always think about our church family like family. And so when someone left, it's always like, oh, that's so hard and sad, and I will really miss them. But for me, it never made me question, is this the right thing to do? Okay. I thought, well, that's not the right thing for them at the moment, and we're going this direction. So they're either on the train or they're off, and that's their choice.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. Miss Kim.
Yes. So, I mean, I feel exactly the same. Steph put it perfectly, because sure enough, you miss people when they leave, and I'm the type of person, I fall in love very quickly. So when people leave, you know, you hate to see them go, but God has always been right there to make sure that, you know, especially for people who've served in pivotal roles when they've had to leave and go in another direction. God's been right there to make sure that we still have somebody that steps up and that's able to fill the role and fill the spot, so that it almost seems like we never miss a beat. So God's good that way.
Wow. Yeah. God still does great things, and I love the mission, and He's gonna make sure He's glorified, but for your good. And it's like God, it says that God will give us the desires of our heart, and we're in alignment with Him, right? So you bless them and say, I wish you could stay, but I understand. Tell me about the cultural differences. Like, how did you guys, I know you guys did a book, okay, but when it really comes down to literally getting together, there's cultural differences. Like I said, the Black church tends to be loud, and I'm saying that because I know I'm loud at church. I just worship, and if I want to say amen out loud, I'm just going to say amen out loud. And so what were some of the differences that you saw and were comfortable or uncomfortable with?
Well, for me, what I find that has happened is we've tried to make space for everyone to feel comfortable in whatever aspect in how they display their worship. If they feel like waving their hands, if they feel like saying amen, we know Bernard and Kyle enjoys hearing amens when they preach. Okay. So we just allow people to be free in giving their worship in whatever way that works for them. And so, and I kind of saw that, in the beginning, people try to navigate their way a little bit, but I think we what do you say? We tried to break that barrier really quick. You know what I mean? To just make it comfortable for everyone to worship in whatever fashion they feel, as long as it's not, outlandish or inappropriate.
Right. So Stephanie, how did you feel? I know when we did our little introduction a couple days ago, you guys had mentioned something that you guys had never really talked about, and that's the difference in the worshiping between the two churches. So Stephanie, how do you feel with the differences, and how do you feel? Do you feel like, okay, that's too much? Okay, man, I can worship. I feel freedom to worship. And I don't want to say what you said, but I want to know if you remember us talking about that, because I'm like, hold that point, hold it.
Yeah, I actually, forgive me, I don't remember the very specific detail you're referencing from previously, but yeah, there are some natural differences. Just like, for example, my culture growing up was more staid, right? Being more quiet, both during songs and during the preaching. It actually really never bothered me that others worshipped in a more vocal way, or even bigger movements. In some ways, I actually enjoyed that, to be honest. And I felt like one thing that has been cool in this whole endeavor is that, like, I've learned about new ways of worshiping God and experiencing God. Yeah. And, I am not so naive to think that my way of praying is the only way of praying, right? Mm-hmm. Or how the songs I sing are the only songs. So it's like really broadened, I think, my scope of what worship looks like and what it can be, and even how to relate to God in different ways. So yeah, there was some adjustment, I think, but again, because our churches had been worshiping together for at least a year, Kim. I can't remember how long. Once a month or once every 6 weeks. It wasn't a shock to me, honestly. And one of the cool things I think about starting afresh was that we actually had to start from ground zero in terms of our music repertoire. What's the songs that we all know? Nothing. There's zero. We had to start from scratch, saying, okay, what kind of music do we want to make together? And I'll bring a favorite song to the table, and Kim bring a favorite song to the table, and we'll both teach each other, and we'll learn new songs as we go. So it has been really expanding for me in that way.
So that is beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. So in me coordinating praise dances, I wanted the words to be ministering to the people. right? I didn't always want this particular artist. I intentionally look for different type of worship music so that the congregation can be fed through the words, through the, and not just this loud noise. Just say that. So when we talked the other day, there was something that you said that I thought was so beautiful and innocent. And it was like, I didn't know if it was okay for me to worship like that, or if it was our thing. You know what I mean? Do you remember saying that point? And I'm like, well, that is amazing. And it's a point that I wanted you to bring up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I do remember what you're referencing. Yeah. I think for me, Kim and the community from the Way, which was now Tapestry, I don't think there was ever like expectations or pretense. Like I never felt pressure to be a certain way. But I think my concern was, in my growing up, I wasn't as vocal during a sermon. So if I started doing it now, was that cultural appropriation in a way that's not helpful? Am I trying to be someone I'm not? And, and would others see that and think, who's she to say amen during a sermon? I think the spirit of our community was not that, and is not that. And so I think over time, as I heard more people around me engaging in that way, it actually felt more and more natural for me to engage that way too, because it wasn't me putting on something, it was me becoming something a little different.
Wow, I love that. I love that. We are, Darvin and I, my husband and I, we are the minority at our church where we are now. We've been there for about 3 years. And I'm just like, I feel like I have to stuff my worship. You know what I mean? And I asked my pastor, who's also new, actually he's newer than we are, do you need me to move back? Because I'm tending to move to the front. Because if they're passing out blessings, don't skip me. Don't run out.
You want to be one of the first in line.
So I asked him, I said, do you need me to walk back to a few pews? And because I'll move. But my worship, I just can't hear. Oh no, don't move back. We need that. We need that. I welcome that. He's from Southern California. He's like, no, San Diego. I'm used to that. We need that. We need to wake people up in the service, and allow them to just surrender to the way, however the Holy Spirit decides to move in them. So that's huge. I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't want to harp on it, but I'm like, that is a beautiful thing. And you're not the only one who may feel like that. So anyone watching this, I just hope that they would see this and be inspired. You can worship however the Spirit moves you. It's your own way. We have
and if not, come to Tapestry. We'll welcome you.
Right.
Tim, what was that like for you? In coming together and being more naturally vocal and having people like me more naturally quiet.
For me, and it's hard for me.
Somebody else, Steph, because Kim, she's just gonna go with the flow.
Right? It's just exactly, because it's like I don't know how to pretend very well. So it's just, for me, I just tend to be myself. And allow other people to be themselves. And I think it's okay, like I said, as long as no one's doing anything that's completely inappropriate, or if they were so loud that you couldn't, if they were being a distraction from the worship, you know what I mean? Or, taken away from, especially like if someone's preaching and they're, overtaking the sermon because they're being so boisterous. That's different, but I love the fact, and I love allowing people to just be themselves, to be their authentic selves. Yeah. And I think everyone should be free to do that.
When I'm in church, I'm like, Holy Spirit, fall. Fall on, baptize them with your power, with your spirit. So they just the attire. So oftentimes in the Black church, it's all dressed up. it's all, I mean, I stopped wearing nylons and I think my ex-mother-in-law almost fell out. You know what I mean? Those type of things. I remember going in my closet with all these clothes and saying, I don't have anything to wear.
Yep.
So I wouldn't go to church. And then I would hate coming home. You missed a good service. What? You know? So has that changed at Tapestry? Has the dress code, if that's the right word, right? Has it changed?
Kim, why don't you share about this?
Yeah.
Well, I will say the Way and Oakland Communion both had pretty lax dress codes. So one of the things that was wonderful for us, and especially all our children, they never felt so free being able to just dress comfortably in whatever that may be. My daughter Jasmine, she just despised tights and stockings and those little frilly dresses. It just worked her nerves. So she was delighted that we had come to a place where people were just free to come and worship and didn't have to worry about what they had on.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about putting on a big hat. You didn't have to worry about having a suit or a dress. But here's the thing: if wearing a suit or dress works for you, then come on and do it. You are free to do that.
Yeah.
But we don't want anyone to feel any pressure to have to do that. That you have to be dressed a certain way. It was said when I was coming up in church, you want to give God your best.
Oh my God.
You're right. And so, and I mean, the young folks can say, hey, these are my best Jordans. What are you talking about? Right?
Yes.
These things cost $200.
Yeah.
Where your nice suit costs $99. You know what I mean? So, it's just about comfortability. People can just come as they are and just feel comfortable with that and not have to worry about fitting some type of status or
And one thing I would add to that, I mean, Kim nailed it. And one thing I would add is that I think like back in Oakland Communion days, and I know for sure now too in Tapestry, like the goal is that that our church would be a safe place for people regardless of where you're at in your walk with Christ. You may have never stepped foot in a church before, and that is okay. And we're so glad that you're here. And you may spend your whole life in a church, and that is okay. And we're so glad that you're here. And so I think in some ways, like the term dress code, I think that's like not even part of our culture really at our church. Like it's be who you are. Like Kim said, each person, be who you are, be where you are, and just join us. And so there's not a lot of expectations around there, which is great. I mean, some Sundays, if I feel like putting on makeup and putting on a dress, I will. Some Sundays, if I feel like throwing on a sweatshirt, I will,
This little sweatsuit I got on will work just fine on a Sunday morning. Woohoo!
I feel like people suppress their worship because they may be too dressed up. And like you said, your daughter in tights, thus the name, tights. So you can't really, worship freely. But yeah, where we are now, I mean, you just don't know how many dresses and suits and stuff we've gotten rid of. And it's just wonderful, and it's not come as you are. It's not the outside. It's the heart that God is talking about. Come as you are. And people think it's my best dress and my best this. No. And then that other side, and the inside is just not your best. You know what I mean? But it looks like it from the outside and that's for man. It's not even for him. So come as you are with your heart all jacked up and all that is what,
Yeah. My husband, as a Black Baptist preacher, being accustomed to those suits, he's never been more free. He might be preaching in shorts and flip-flops. Who knows?
Actually, he mentioned that. He said he went to church like that and preached, and I think it was his dad that almost had a fit, So
major coronary. Yeah.
So, Steph, how did your parents feel with the change? How did your parents feel? Your grandparents?
That's such an interesting question, and it makes me think, gosh, I don't know if I've ever asked them directly. Next time maybe I should ask them. Probably me as a kid not being as mindful of the fact that my parents, have their own thoughts and opinions, and actually asking them about it outright. But I would say that my parents and Kyle's parents have been really supportive of our call from the beginning. Planting is a strange thing and a hard thing, and I think they knew that, and they also knew, okay, God's in it, so they're gonna follow God in it, and we're gonna support them as best we can. So I always felt very supported by our parents, and in fact, like my parents' ministry, my parents live in Southern California, and my dad just retired from preaching and leading a church there for 34 years. Wow. And that a large part of the ministry, that church has been about multicultural inclusion, and they have over the years he's been there, they developed a Spanish speaking ministry, and they have a very diverse congregation. So they actually, like, the vision of living in a more integrated world, and really being brothers and sisters, really, they have been all about that my whole life, and are all about seeing the church be more and more like that too. So I think they always had questions like, well, how is it actually going to work, and what's it actually going to look like, just like we did. Right. But I don't think neither of us really felt any, neither Kyle or I felt any sense of resistance from our parents in it, which is a blessing.
Mm-hmm. That is a huge blessing.
Yeah.
And Kim? Miss Kim?
Well, so my mom has been with us all the way. So when we planted the way, she was there. When we formed Tapestry, she's been right there.
Wow.
And so, my biological father has passed away. So my stepdad, he passed away also before we formed this church. So it's always just been for me, my mom, and Bernard lost his mom several years ago as well. So my mom has kind of been the pillar for us in supporting us regardless to what we do. And although I think you may have heard, a little bit about, Bernard's relationship with his father, when we were planting, there was a little bit of a disconnect, but thank God they were able to reconnect, and he supports us 100%. So it's wonderful to have, our parents love and support us. And that's been very, very vital for us.
It's huge. It's very huge, especially in light of what the world is going through. So I know that you guys had...
I gotta say, can I say one other thing here about that topic? Because it kind of just cracks me up. So both of our parents, Kyle and my parents, live in the Los Angeles area, and would come and visit occasionally, and they loved coming to Tapestry. They're just overjoyed with our community and where we're at. But since during COVID times, we've moved online. At least Kyle's folks every week, and sometimes my folks after the fact, watch our services. So in some ways, they're actually part of our church now too, just remotely, which has been kind of a fun thing in a new way that they've been supporting us in this last season. And it's not just, I know they're not doing it actually just so that we feel supported. They're doing it because they like it, and we love the community. So that's been a cool thing to see in the last 6 months. Kyle's like, wow, I never thought my parents would be in my congregation.
Almost every Sunday.
And they're all so awesome. I just feel like both Steph and Kyle's parents are like our parents also, because they love us just like they love them. So we love having them in our life as well.
That is amazing. I love that. I love the relationship that you guys have, the camaraderie. It's just a beautiful thing. And it's not always easy, but you guys make it look so easy, but you did the right things going in.
I can honestly say I've never felt upset with or disappointed with. I've never felt any type of negativity when it's come to staff or Kyle. I honestly have not. Mm-hmm. I haven't had any reason to necessarily feel like that's a bad idea, or I don't think we should do it. I have never felt that. I hope I never do. You know, maybe I'm a little bit naive, and like I said, sometimes some things are too far with me, but I thank God for that, because it helps me to ease and breeze through life. But nonetheless, I don't have anything negative to say. I don't have any negative feelings about them whatsoever. And that's the honest to God truth.
Oh, you know what? I love that. That's huge. And that's so honest. But like I said, because of who you guys are, and Stephanie, when I met you the other day, it felt like I had just been knowing you. We can laugh, and so you two together make it look so easy, and it's just a beautiful thing. What have you guys done to intentionally support one another as pastors' wives?
Not enough, I don't think.
It's hard now.
Yeah, not enough. And I think COVID has kind of, thrown a monkey wrench into everything to do. But we reach out to each other periodically, especially if we have something we need prayer for. But I think we both agree, because, we didn't really have any pictures together. It's like, what's been going on, So it's like,
you guys get pictures together.
And it's like, I guess we just never really thought about it. We've taken pictures with our husbands, but what I mean? It's like, didn't feel like it needed to necessarily be intentional because we're the wives. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's not the case, but she is my sister and we should have pictures together.
Yeah, and now you do, because it's going to be forever on the website. So anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point and a great push. And I think Kim and I can do more, and I would love to do that. I gotta tell you, I mean, I knew Kim loved me always, but I knew she really loved me about 2 years ago when it was a Sunday and I got really sick. I had some, the flu, and I've been in bed for 3 days, and Kim texted and said, "Hey, you doing all right?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not good." And I've been, and she goes, "What can I get you from the store?" And I'm coming over, and she came over, she brought me Gatorade, she brought me Ritz crackers. She came and she washed my sink full of dishes because I had been in bed for 3 days. And I was like, she really loves me. I hadn't showered in 3 days. I mean, yeah, it was
huge.
Yeah.
You're so fabulous, Kim.
Look, and they just recently bought a house and they did the remodeling and everything, so it's nice. I'll come wash dishes now for real stuff, because I like your kitchen.
My kitchen is your kitchen, so you come over anytime you want.
Right.
I have some dishes down there.
Okay. Look, I don't mind taking a ride, girl. Your house is fabulous too. She has a beautiful home staff. She has a beautiful home.
We should get together in person sometime after COVID passes.
Absolutely.
I'm coming. Anyway, ladies, I want to take a quick pivot. I want to turn. But I love the fact that you guys, I asked them about the shelter in place, like what happened? Were you guys already live streaming or no? And I understand that you guys were not. However, the equipment was purchased a week prior to the shelter in place. So I'm like, God, is this all over? Yeah.
Yes, I'm telling you, we've had to do a lot of stuff on the fly, though, for real.
Yeah, but the background stuff is just a whole different story. You make it look seamless and it's beautiful. And now I want to talk about the big elephant in the room, which is the social racial divide across the country. Has your conversations changed? I know that you guys did a lot of work up front, but has your conversations changed with your congregation in light of what's going on with the racial tension in the world? Have you noticed any of that? Or are you intentional about having those conversations?
Well, I know, and I don't know if the gentleman spoke about it, but definitely as a church, we definitely saw the need to address it. We've had several conversations over Zoom, different formats to give room for even us as Blacks or African Americans to lament, to express any frustration and concerns that we had. We had an open forum to be able to do that. And then we came back together and talked about, the church allowed us, even African Americans, to discuss or to address any actual racial tensions that we faced individually. And it was really, really an awesome experience, even so much where people were truthful and authentic about them displaying some prejudices. And not even really necessarily realizing it, and it not being intentional, and having an opportunity to, apologize or to, express regret or shame for those times that they did. And they were able to be allowed to freely express that and not be judged and not be ridiculed. And so I love that about our church, that we made space to talk about it, and we still continue to make space. It's going to always be something that's going to be something that has to be expressed and shared in our community, because we are multi-ethnic. So there are always going to be differences, but the important piece is that we always have to be able to talk about it.
And I think it makes such a big difference to have these conversations in the context of relationship. Because I know as a white person, sometimes my fear of engaging is I don't want to say the wrong thing. But guess what? I've learned I am going to say the wrong thing sometimes. And that's okay. And because I have a relationship with Kim, she can correct me and she can help me understand why that's the wrong thing. And I can apologize and she will forgive me and we can move forward. And I think that, we need to, in our country, I think we need so many more relationships so that you can have those conversations and the safety of making mistakes and apologizing and forgiving and moving forward. And unless you have that, you just talk in your own echo chamber and you don't change very much. So I think that having these conversations in the midst of relationship is really transformative and super important. I think a few of the things that come to my mind, we have had a number, like Kim said, of special conversations and get-togethers in the midst of, in the wake of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, all this. But we also have ongoing connect groups that meet midweek, and they're sermon discussion groups. And intentionally, connect groups are always led by diverse leadership. So there's at least 2 leaders, and they always are different from one another. And the groups are intentionally diverse. And so for me, in the last 2 years, I've been in connect groups with people who have different life experiences for me. And I've heard, not just when these big incidents happen, but I've heard week in and week out, the ways that our realities are different, and sometimes the pains and the prejudice that my brothers and sisters are dealing with. And so I've learned a lot, honestly, through the 2 years of being in relationship with one another, not just in these poignant moments. So certainly I'm learning a lot right now and trying to change in some key ways right now. But that has been an ongoing process. And then the other thing that's our church has done in the wake of what happened in May and June this past year, some of the white folks who've opted in have been invited to be part of anti-racism cohorts. So we formed small groups. Anyone who is like, hey, this is a problem and I want to engage in a deeper way, would raise their hand, and we're put in groups of 3 or 4. And I'm in one of those groups, and we're working through a book and an online curriculum and an online course where we're being taught and led by Black leaders in this topic, and learning more and taking action together. And so that's been really, really informative for me too. So it's been, I'm really grateful in this season to be part of Tapestry, because it's a hard time to navigate, and I need my brothers and sisters who have different experiences to help me journey alongside of me in this.
It's beautiful. It's huge. It's huge. And I like the fact that it's uncomfortable, yet we're sitting in that uncomfortability. We're sitting in that because we do want to know. And our experiences are all very different. It's just, we're just having the conversations. And a lot of it, I know it starts at home, but it also starts with the church. And so that's huge already. The world is looking at the church, and the church shouldn't be looking at the world. So it's a big thing that Tapestry and hopefully other churches are having these hard conversations instead of closing their eyes and just not saying anything, and wanting to know and wanting to change. It's huge. If we say we belong to Christ, right? He died for us all. So we should all have the same liberties and so on and so forth. So I love that. I love that you guys are, how you say fashion forward, church forward, because I've never heard of, two churches doing this. So that's why I'm like, okay, when Kim first brought it to me, I'm like, that's huge. It's huge. It's unheard of.
It's so funny. It still kind of surprises me. I think, like, when you live your life, sometimes you're just in it. And to hear you say that, and I know we've had some like press coverage that felt like it came out of the blue.
Right. That was amazing.
It's so amazing, really.
Right.
Yeah. Because have you ever heard of it before? Your church planters and all this, but have you ever literally heard of two churches doing this?
Yeah, but no, we had never seen it before directly until.
Yeah. And it's like, it's nothing to you guys. Like, it's just huge. It is huge. I've never heard of it.
I tend to kind of look at it in the aspect, but probably to the 10th power, if you will, because we're family. But, we have these types of relationships every day if we work outside of our homes. You're dealing with other people of other cultures and ethnicities all the time. So why should it be so hard to do it at church?
Yeah, but Kim, I think it's different because this is intentional.
Yeah, definitely is intentional. I'm just saying it shouldn't be so hard because we're not going to quit our job because we got other ethnicities there.
Yeah,
right?
But we're not going to quit our job. But you guys close the doors of your churches intentionally. You know what I mean? So it's different because I have to eat. I'm going to work over here and it's diverse. You know what I mean? It is different. And yeah, we do that. This is our everyday life. We live in the world with all these different people, but we can't help that. But this is something that you can help because you could have just kept your doors open to your own individual churches and had your God and you had your God, and you know what I mean? And
I think two things that helped me with that. One, I knew that our churches, that at least from Oakland Communion, we were better when we would join with the Way.
Wow.
If we had stayed separate, I don't know if we would have lasted.
Right. I agree with you. Absolutely. I agree. Aside from the fact that we believe it's God's vision for the church and that we would all become better people by it, like, it actually wasn't as sustainable to do it apart as it is together. And so that way it felt easy. Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that.
And the other thing I think, and Kim, I'm sure you have funny stories too about this, but I think when you're church planting, you get used to trying things.
There's no wrong way, like I said.
Yeah.
You're doing something.
We never done nothing before, so there's no wrong way.
Yeah, there is no plan B. There's only a plan A. So you make it work. If it fails, you try again. You just make it work. Go back to plan A. There's no go to plan B and C. No, you go back to plan A, right?
Well, or you have an idea and you think, okay, this might work. Let's try it. It didn't work. Okay, let's try something else. Like, and there's this like spirit. And honestly, that's a little bit harder for me. Like Kim was saying, I'm like super type A. I'm a planner. I'm like nothing's gonna fail type of person. And
I'm like, okay.
learn to be flexible and adaptable and to try something and to pivot. That was a really growing edge for me. But in some ways, I think having those couple of years of doing that prior, like, helped me to come into this being like, yeah, it's kind of unsettling that I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I know it's going to be okay. And this is worth taking this risk forward because it was so obvious to me that it was worth moving.
Yeah. I love that you guys are so innocent. Like, where's all this publicity coming from? And that's proof that it's a God thing.
Yeah.
And it's very unique. It's unique, you guys. And I don't know, I told Kyle, I said, I think you guys need to start having workshops. I think the Tapestry need to start having workshops to teach other churches how to do it. I mean, because I think even the courtship, I keep calling it, was amazing. And even the funeral services, I mean, come on. That's like a God thing, right? How do you put on your wife hat and support your husband in his ministry, in the headship? How do you support him in his ministry as the pastors? And it's so weird. It's like, how did you guys figure out who's going to be the pastor?
Totally on them. That was their thing. That was totally their thing. And it never even, again, me being me, I didn't know what the roles were going to be.
Also, one of the differences, so Kim and I are different in that way, and also our husbands are different. Like, Kyle's a verbal processor. So sometimes he's talking to me even though I didn't ask. So, part of my work of being a good wife is listening as best I can and supporting, just listening to him and being there.
And for Bernard, because he does not always like to talk, for me, praying for him.
Yeah.
A lot of praying for him. And just, if I need him to hear something, then I just make sure that I say, hey, you got a few minutes? Can I talk to you? I try not to just throw it on him. So I just try to make sure that he can really hear me, because a lot of times it's like water off a duck's back. He ain't hearing me. So yeah, but definitely covering them in prayer is the biggest thing.
And it's huge. It's huge. It's a huge responsibility for husbands, for men, for pastors. So that's why I wanted to honor you two. I think it's huge, and I think the role or the hats that women wear as pastors' wives, ministers' wives, is huge. And sometimes it falls by the wayside and it feels like it's nothing. But I know that you guys are the backbones of your husband's success, and that's hugely, hugely important, and it needs to be recognized. So I honor you guys. But before I close out with you two, I wanted to know if there's anything that I have not asked you that you would like to share or that you would like to say. We'll start with Ms. Kim.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. You and I met so many years ago on a fluke, is what I say, and just became sisters and have maintained our friendship and relationship since, like I say, like 2006. And so I appreciate the fact that when I shared with you what we were doing, you thought that was amazing, and you took the time to not only talk to our husbands about it, but to get our perspective as well. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you love Steph just like I do, and that you find her to be just as fabulous as you find me.
Oh yeah. Hey, anybody that's your friend is fabulous. So yes, Steph, you're fabulous. If no one's told you, I'm telling you now, Steph, you're fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been a pleasure to talk with you, and likewise, I knew when Kim said, "Oh, my good friend asked if we can do this," I'm like, "Yeah, it's gonna be. If you say she's great, I believe it." So, and yeah, I think your questions have prompted some new thoughts, even things I hadn't thought about in that way before, and things that I want to maybe think about more, dig into more. So thank you. I appreciate that. One thing with regards to that last question around supporting our husbands, I mean, I definitely agree with what Kim said. I think prayer is the most important and best thing we can be doing. And one thing that's been so incredible for me to see is that I think so often pastors work really independently and really solo. And it's been so cool for yes, our church is interracial and multi-class and multi-generational and all this, but to see Kyle and Bernard work together and be real partners, like that, it really has actually blessed me too. For one, because and Pastor Catherine too, I should mention.
I was just gonna say we can't leave our girl out. That's our girl.
No, Pastor Catherine is on the staff
She's
as well.
the glue that keeps those brothers in check. Just so Catherine's been there from the beginning as well.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and that yes, it's so important. I think like it's been really lovely for me to have pastors who aren't my husband. That and like I know Bernard prays for me. I know Catherine prays for me, and to have them as my pastors too has been a real gift to me. And also to see that Kyle doesn't have to carry the weight on his own.
Yes.
I think sometimes when church planting, he felt such a heavy burden, and I would shoulder it as best I could with him. But now I know that Bernard and Catherine are shouldering it with him, and he doesn't feel as isolated in the work.
Wow.
And that has really been huge for his well-being and for us even too, in terms of like, living in ministry like more healthily, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've heard me say before that I did not like that brother on Sunday mornings because he was stressed out. And he would like take that out on everybody in the house. I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Now I love it because he's got help, he's got support, and it's just been amazing. So taking such a weight off of his shoulders that he doesn't have to bear the brunt of the ministry alone.
I wish more churches would do it. I mean, certainly for the to see racial justice and equity fall through our country more, like that's certainly super important, super needed. And even beyond that, to have partnership in ministry, it's so important. And so
huge.
Yeah, I would hope that. I hope that for anyone in ministry that they can experience that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosalind.
That is huge.
I realized that your husband was a minister too, that you were pastor's wife.
That's why I was just like, let me talk to the ladies who are like doing this thing, because I'm like, and I have a heart for people. I have a huge heart for people. And so I want everyone to be happy. You know what I mean? And if everyone's not happy, then that makes me unhappy. So I don't know if I can walk in your shoes. So God hasn't called my husband yet to pastor a church, but I was still very nervous as him being an associate minister, and even when my dad would preach, because my dad is a minister too, I would always feel like really nervous, because of the people. And now I'm just like, you know what? If God called them, he'll keep them. But to have someone come alongside you and hold your arms up when you can't hold them up anymore, that is ginormous. So Stephanie, thank you so much for even bringing that out. It's huge. Ministry it's hard. It's rewarding, but it's hard. And a lot of times people don't see the behind the scenes things that people do to make it look like it's perfect. Just, they don't see all of that. So bless your hearts. I really, really love both of you guys. And it has been my honor and privilege to just take up some of your time. I appreciate you pausing for me. And I just wish you well and much more success. And I love Tapestry Church. and I can't wait to visit. I know that you guys just recently celebrated your 2-year anniversary. So it's not like it's something new. It's not like it's something because of what's going on in our world. No, God had his hand on this back in 2016. So you guys are a blessing, and I just pray that this catches fire. It catches fire.
Amen.
We love and appreciate you, sis.
Guys, I love you guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Love you, Steph.
You're welcome. Love you too, Kim. And thank you, Rosalind. It's been a joy.
Awesome. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
All right, take care.